Hey, cosmic warriors, spiritual skeptics, or just a random confused human. Welcome to another dimension. It's time to sit down with me, your reluctant mystic Michelle, coming to you from the void between worlds to talk about some really interesting metaphysical stuff. Who am I? Just a human who's been thrown into this place called Earth, who has a lot of questions, born with a whole bunch of gifts, but not a lot of answers. So what this podcast is going to do is explore some paranormal mysteries, energetic phenomena, and a lot of FML moments that have you questioning, what the hell are we doing here? So if you're spiritual or you're just really confused, this is the right place for you. So join me if you like riding the waves of the quantum ocean and getting really down deep into the WTF of what's going on here. Because, as I always say, they're legit. There's no way I signed up for this. So if you're ready for a wild ride, let's go. So this episode's going to be about intuition. And all of us have it. Some of it just have been able to understand how to utilize it a little bit more, right? It's like a frequency on the radio. Now, we don't have radio kind of like we did back in the day where you actually had to keep turning the knob to get the right frequency, where you might be right at the station you want, but it's just not too clear, so you have to keep adjusting till you get that right sweet spot. And that's kind of how intuition is. It's kind of like your antenna. Everybody has this ability. Some people call it gut feeling, right? Some people call it something told me. Intuition is the something. Intuition is that gut feeling for the most part. A lot of times it can really kind of keep us out of trouble, right? It's God's little warning system that he installed in every living thing to determine, hey, this might not be a good idea, but you can use it for so much more. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. And then the other part is going to be talking more about what happens when intrusive thoughts come into play. So when you're talking about intuition, right, you got a gut feeling you should do this. You got a gut feeling you should do that. Or something told me not to talk to that person. Or I should have listened and followed my first mind. Which is, there you go. You got a notification to confirm that. But that's that intuition. What happens though, and this is a question I get from a lot of people, but also from myself. What happens when intuition and intrusive thoughts kind of collide, intersect, to where you don't know if it's intuition or a trauma response? So this can kind of happen in a lot of different experiences in life, but I'm going to focus it on relationships, right? So how do you know if what you're feeling about somebody is intuitive, right? Oh, something's telling me this person is not the right person, or this person is doing this, that, and the other. Now, I will say, sometimes you're absolutely right. Sometimes you get an intuitive hit that, this person really has a lot of other individuals they're talking to, and I'm not the main one. Or you get an intuitive hit like, maybe I should follow up on what they said that they were going to do, because I'm picking up that that's not what's happening, or they're someplace else. So, yeah. So sometimes it is true. The challenge is trying to figure out how to decipher between intuition and intrusion. So when intrusion comes into play, right, that same a feeling of that person's talking to other people, or that person, when you see maybe your significant other communicating with another individual, you're picking up that there's something else there, right? You're at a company event and he or she bumps into somebody and you're picking something up. Like, they haven't told you that maybe they used to smash, maybe they were involved, but you can see through their interaction, I'm picking something up. Now, could you be? Maybe. Could this be a trauma response? Absolutely. So let's decipher some ways to determine if what I'm feeling is intuition or is it intrusion. So a lot of times with intuition, the feeling or the notification, the nudge comes in without you doing any logical thinking ahead of time. Okay, so that's going to be a really important part. So if you're taking notes, who takes notes during a podcast? But if you're taking notes, this is what we're going to talk about, right? When you get an intuitive hit, there's usually nothing preceding it. It kind of just drops in. Or some people will call them downloads, because you could be going about your day and then all of a sudden you just know this or you just feel this, right? That's going to be one of your first indicators that it's most likely intuition. So say the same example, right? You're on the way to the event, or you've just been notified, your significant other contacts you and says, hey, there's an event at work. I want to go. Can you be ready at blah, blah, blah. And then automatically you get a sense, oh, we're going to bump into somebody that he used to have an interaction or a relationship with. That would be an example of an intuitive hit, because there is nothing preceding that would suggest that you didn't even know you were going to bump into anybody, right? Intrusion comes in a lot of times when there has been thought put into place, right? There has been time to kind of mull over the experience, what's been going on, and now you're developing a storyline, a narrative. Now, could intuition be assisting that? It could, but there's a definite difference in how quickly the information comes in and how fast you respond, right? In the sense of right when it drops in, you're like, whoa, well, that came out of nowhere. Anytime you have that came out of nowhere feeling, it's most likely intuition, because that typically comes out of nowhere. And going back to the previous podcast about being an empath and determining whose feelings are whose or what belongs to what, again, it comes out of nowhere. Like you are going about your day and it's like, bam. Okay, I wasn't even thinking about this person, yet here I am. So the takeaway for how to determine, again, how quickly the information comes, what you are doing when the information comes, right? What's the preceding factors? What's your environment? Did something trigger this response? Because that's the second thing. The first is the speed of the nudge, right? And again, for the example, out of nowhere, I'm going to bump into somebody my significant other was involved with, out of nowhere. Versus actually doing the bumping into, watching the interaction, having some time to process, and then saying, I know what's happening here. See the difference? Now, the moving into the second phase is the logical aspect of being triggered by something. So, again, using the same example, you might be talking to a friend who's going through some similar situations with somebody being unfaithful, right? Then you pull in the fact that, wow, my significant other works with a lot of females, and I'm using male and female gender for this example. So now you have time to be thinking about the experience, and you're triggered, or you have a visceral response because you're seeing somebody who is experiencing it, or you've already experienced something similar in your life. Okay, so let's unpackage that piece. So the first step is determining location, speed, what's been going on, everything when the information comes in. The second piece is checking in with you. Right? Is this a actual thought process that makes sense? Right? So, do I know people going through this? Because I'm looking at it through that lens now. Or have I experienced this before? If you've been cheated on before, you have to understand that's going to have an impact subconsciously on how you see the world. You could do the work to process it. You can do the work to heal through it. But it's an ongoing thing where you're going to second guess sometimes, right? Or do some further questioning, your due diligence to make sure it doesn't happen again. And sometimes that's when the intrusion comes in or the trauma response comes in, because I don't want to go through that again. So in a situation that could be completely innocent now looks very different because of the lens you're looking through. And then we call it intuition. And that's where we can get caught up. That's where we can lose really good connections. That's when we sometimes can be misunderstood. So what do we do with this, right? I gave you pointers on how to determine if it's intuition or intrusion, why intrusion can be a concern, the impacts it can have on you and your relationships. So how do we address it? We practice the pause. If you followed me over the years, I use this phrase a lot. Practice the pause, and we'll have another topic later about reaction and responding and what the difference is. But this kind of falls in that bubble, practicing the pause. Slow down your reaction. Now, if it's a life or death reaction and you intuitively get the notion, don't go over that bridge this morning, then don't go over the bridge, right? Again, look at how this information is coming in. But if you have a moment to practice the pause before you react, before you respond, right? And that's a difference. We're going to talk about that in the next episode. And then look at what's going on. Is there something else going on that could cause me to feel this way? Is there something similar to this experience that has happened to me before that's causing me to look at it through this lens? Not to say it's incorrect. Not to say you're not being given an intuitive hit. But what I am saying is, before you react or respond to a situation, give yourself time to sit back and try to decipher what's going on here. Now, I know I said giving yourself time can kind of make it more complicated when you're trying to determine if it's intuition. Because when your cognitive function starts, that frontal lobe, when you start thinking, when the ego kicks in, it can be complicated in that space. So that's when you have to look and say, okay, is this worth the response that I'm about to do, or this reaction that I'm about to have? What are some ways I can do my due diligence to ensure I'm making the right call here? Sometimes it's calling in a trusted friend, right? Calling in a lifeline, like, I'm picking this up. Is this what you're hearing when I say this? And usually we gifted individuals, which everybody's gifted. So I'm not going into a hierarchy here. Everybody has gifts. It's just some people utilize them by leaning in more. And it's just like a muscle. So you have to use it. You have to practice it. You have to be comfortable with it so it gets stronger. So you know exactly how to tune in, right? The more you use it, the easier it is to tune in and get this information. So I'm just putting that caveat there. There's no hierarchy to this. There's different missions and assignments, but everybody has been given a toolkit. How you choose to use it, completely up to you. So back to what I was saying. That was like just a little side note. Back to what I was saying though. When you are able to talk to some other people, usually people kind of function in pods, right? Who they vibe with. Right, who they connect with. And a lot of times it's individuals who are kind of same in that same frequency. So you might notice that you are surrounded by other individuals who might have certain gifts. Usually they differ in a way because a lot of the gifts are supposed to be based and built with one another. I know for me, when I start connecting or talking to individuals who are gifted and actually lean into it as well, it amplifies my abilities and theirs. So it's kind of like bringing in tuning forks, and then when they get together you vibrate the same and you're able to get more information. But they're also able to see things differently And even though they might be your friend, if they're able to pick things up and say, you know what, I'm picking that up too, or they can say, nope, I think you're tripping on this one. So again, a way to get around, if you're not able to determine if it's intuition or intrusion / trauma response, talk to somebody that you trust and say, look, am I tripping right now? Like, what's going on? Are you picking up the same thing? And then again, practicing the pause before you react or respond. Check in with yourself. Like, okay, is this really what I'm seeing? Or is this really intuitive hit? So it can be confusing, especially for individuals who are just now learning in that space about intuition, cognitive reasoning, all these things that kind of play in the same sandbox, but not together, adjacent, to help us navigate life. But I wanted to just kind of highlight how you can work on practicing using your intuition in downloads, right? Clairaudience, clairvoyance, all the clairs, like all of those are in the same kind of bubble here. So how to utilize your gifts that you've been given to assist you in navigating your experience here versus allowing intrusion to come in and complicate, delay, deflect situations. But I'm very curious to hear about your experiences on how you work with determining what's intuitive and what's intrusion. And I always like it when I see people in the comments give kind of what they use, because I like to use the collective intelligence here when we're talking about things like this. Because look, I don't know everything. I speak from my experiences, and I speak from what I've been able to witness through clients that I work with, but also what I get downloaded. Like, all the topics that I talk about aren't coming from my frontal lobe and what I'm sitting here thinking. All of the topics that I bring up come from source. Spirit, Holy Spirit. That's going to be a whole nother conversation about channeling and the dangers around that. Channeling sickness. That's a whole nother conversation. But we're coming to the end. We want to wrap it up here. Hopefully some of the information or tools, techniques that I gave you will be helpful. If you are interested, on the YouTube channel, I do sessions that are that complement each pod episode. So it's a unique way for me to tap into the collective energy, provide messages primarily through channeling for individuals who resonate with what you're hearing right now, or any words or keywords that will be posted in the description. Also, angel numbers. If you're seeing repetitive numbers, those are typically indicators. If you know anything about computers and stuff, everything's in code. Think of it as code to get you to a message or a next level of something, of understanding. I'm just a tool, just a voice box here, delivering the information, but I definitely want to hear feedback on if it was helpful, how you've been able to do it in your own life, determining what's intuitive and what's intrusion, and any other topics that you want to hear. But definitely check out the YouTube channel if you're interested in that piece. And the next episodes are going to be looking at reaction and response. But I'm going to have a special edition about channeling. That is my primary gift, my primary skill. But it has been a very hard one to assimilate to in my life. So that's going to be a whole nother discussion for another day. But thank you all so much for being here. And as always, you guys take care, stay safe, and keep your eyes to the sky.